I'm almost at the end of my book now. This is going to be chapter 20, The Road Ahead, and this is the last part, part 3. My book is called It's Not a Boy, and if you go over to Leaf by Leaf Press website, you'll see other books that I've written and other books my friends have written too that you might like to get. But we must go on because we have to read out what happened to me. I hadn't passed my 11 plus, my scholarship, and I didn't know which class I was going to be in. I did know I would not be in the top class though at Ripsey Comprehensive. My mother made my uniform. She always did. This time she did a skirt without pleats, and she knitted a cardie and made me a blouse, but there were some things that she could not make. One of those things was a tie. I had to have a school tie and tie it like my dad did when he went to a posh event. She also didn't make my knickers, so she bought me some knickers with a pocket in, so that I could put something in there like a hanky or my charm bracelet. And the last thing she didn't buy me was my satchel. I had a satchel from the shoe shop, from the leather shop at Ringham, and it smelled of raw leather, of the leather of Dobbin, our horse that had to go to the knacker's yard. I had to wear my old shoes, of course. Mum said there was plenty of wear in them yet, and also I hadn't grown, so I hadn't grown out of my shoes. My dad put studs on them underneath, just to make sure that they wouldn't wear out more quickly than they should. And so I was ready to go to my new school. When we got off the bus, all the new ones had to go into a great big hall, and it made my shoes sound so noisy on the polished wooden floor, because of Dad's studs, of course. I hoped nobody would notice. Then we had to wait for our names to be called. That would tell us what class to go in. First there was class E, and then there was D. Charlie and Fatty's names were called out, and off they went with a grin with the other kids. Doreen was in class C. Brenda was in B. She had to go with her class, and we stared at each other with wide eyes for a minute, and then she was gone. We were separated. I pressed my hand on my belly to try and feel the horseshoe on my bracelet that she'd given me, and it was now in my knicker pocket. But I couldn't tell which was the horseshoe. It was just like one lump. My name had not been called. And of course, when Class A names were called, mine wasn't there. I knew it wouldn't be. I hadn't passed the 11 plus. Virginia's name was called, of course, and she set off with her group. My name had not been called. I was left behind, and I stood there and hung my head. My new leather satchel had its strap across my chest, and I could smell the doomed Dobbin again. He went for slaughter. What was going to happen to me? Maybe I wasn't even good for the E class. I hadn't passed my scholarship. I wasn't good enough for any class. I had nowhere to go, and so I had to stay in my dark shadow and just stare at my studded shoes in shame. My name had not been called. There was silence. till suddenly I heard a bang, and I looked up, and to my surprise I saw some other kids were standing there with me. They were just staring on their own, scattered about in the hall. But I didn't know anybody, and still stood in silence. Then I realized that the banging of the door was the opening and shutting. In flew a man with a big face and a sharp nose stuck out in front. I said flew because he was going so fast that his feet hardly touched the floor. And he was wearing a black gown that flowed out behind him like wings. He had soft shoes, and they made no noise on the wooden floor as he moved, not like mine. His hands were behind his back, and his head was pushed forward as he stood in front of us. A tall man in a tweed suit marched behind him and then stood by his side. "Attention, chaps!" shouted the tweed man. And the flying man stopped and stepped forward and looked round and waited a bit. I didn't think that you waited for a drop, but there was so much silence you could definitely hear a pin drop. Then he spoke. "I am Mr. Sparrow," said the headmaster. "I am the new headmaster of Ripsey Comprehensive School." Well, I would never have thought he would have been called Sparrow, not like our sparrows with their untidy nests and chittering and chattering in collections in the mud. If he'd been called Mr. Magpie, I could really believe that, with his black and white and his pointy nose like a beak. I bet he was unlucky as well. This was the man who would have read my letter and my What I Am Good At list. I wonder what he thought. I bet he laughed at it. "I am from a county called Norfolk." Oh, well, it was a good job I didn't tell him in my letter about what I saw in Norfolk then. I would have been really embarrassed, and he might have wanted to talk to me about it, him coming from Norfolk and all. I would have been even more embarrassed and more shame at telling him about seeing a man with his trousers down. Anyway, Mr. Sparrow was still talking. "I am new today, just as you are, and together we are going on a journey to success. I have decided to handpick a group of children who show promise, but have not passed into the A class. You are my chosen group." Well, he was not lucky after all. He was very lucky indeed. "If you work hard and do well, you will have your chance, and in the fullness of time you could join your gifted classmates. You could go into the prestigious A class. You could be on the road to success." He stopped and stared at us over his big black glasses. "I know that you will not let me down. You are my chosen ones, and we are on a journey together." And with that he swooped out, leaving the tweed man behind with us all. Me? I'm a chosen one. I'm going somewhere at last, on a journey with Mr. Sparrow. He must have liked my letter and my What I Am Good At list. And after all, maybe Mr. Bantam told him I'd been ill. And maybe my charm bracelet had worked, what with Brenda's new horseshoe fastened to it. And maybe Auntie Martha had even prayed for me. But oh, that did not matter now. The only thing that matters was that I was on the road to success with Ripsey headmaster. My mum and dad would be very proud of me because I had a chance, after all, to better myself and go up in the world, even though I wasn't a boy. Pay attention, everyone. Your form is called 1S. You're named after the headmaster, the prestigious Mr. Sparrow. And the tweed suit man said, My name is Mr. Fishwick, and I am your tutor. Then we all had to line up. Then Mr. Fishwick said, Forward march to your form room. And we followed him. I heard my shoes clip-clopping on the polished wooden floor like lucky baskets. Now I knew exactly where I was going. The sun came out and shone through the window ahead of me as I stepped with a quick march down our bright school corridor. I held my head high, thinking that I had left all those dark shadows and shame behind. See you again soon.